Of course, in a few weeks' time, it's going to be the site of the Llangollen International Eisteddfod. So we've been talking to people in the area. They are absolutely distraught. They're absolutely shocked by what's gone on. These are two elderly, defenceless pensioners who've been killed, and as yet we've actually no idea about why this brutal killing has actually happened.
Ian Lang in Llangollen, thank you very much.
And of course we'll bring you any updates on that story in our late bulletin. That's at 11:20 tonight with Sarah Hibbard.
And HTV News will be back at the usual time, 6 o'clock tomorrow night. Until then, from all of us on the programme, good night.
Good night.
HTV Weather, sponsored by Oakwood.
Hi there. Well, what a fantastic day. We've had plenty of sunshine, lovely warm temperatures and just a touch of low-lying mist, but nothing really too horrendous. If we take a look at our pressure movie, you can see we have this area of high pressure to thank. It's placed itself rather nicely over Central Europe and the southern half of the UK, and it's keeping everything nice and settled and summery. There are a few fronts lurking out there in the Atlantic, but they're not really going to give us any bother until the weekend, when there may be the odd thundery shower. But let's not worry about that quite yet. As we head into tonight, then, if we take a little fly around the coastline, you can see it's going to stay fine and dry. Coastal areas again becoming rather murky and perhaps a few patches of mist forming in the early hours. But look how mild it's going to be, a low there of 10 degrees. That's better than some daytime temperatures we've seen recently. Waking up to Thursday, again you can see some patches of mist clearing inland but hanging on in there a little more around the coasts. But the good news is the sun is back. Lots of yellow blobs on the map, getting brighter and brighter then as we move into the afternoon, and getting hotter and hotter too. Highs there of 24 degrees Celsius, that's a whopping 75 in Fahrenheit. Further east and around the border, even warmer still. Definitely the best figures we've had so far this year. So if you are out and about, remember the sunscreen, because you will catch without even realising it. The outlook for Friday, again fantastic temperatures, although it will become more humid, but make the most of it, because those thundery showers I mentioned are on their way towards us for the weekend, which is fairly typical. In the meantime, a quick recap on tonight. Dry with patches of mist. Tomorrow again is going to be hot and sunny. Bye-bye.
HTV Weather. Come rain or shine, Oakwood's fine.
I feel like a prisoner in my own home. Look, they're still out there.
The pollen count, sponsored by Benadryl, one a day.
Well, that warm sunny weather we've seen today has pushed the pollen levels up to moderate, remaining that way tomorrow and as we head into the weekend. Grass pollen really causing the bulk of the problems. Hay fever sufferers living in rural areas will be worst affected, with pollen levels slightly lower than around the coasts.
Crimestoppers, sponsored by Sweb Electricity and Gas.
Detectives in Cardiff want to speak to this man in the dark jacket about an indecent assault on a 16-year-old girl. The girl was threatened and molested at a bus stop in the Llanellian area. Do you recognise him? A man in the unbuttoned black shirt was attacked and robbed by the two other men in this video in Great Western Lane in Cardiff city centre. They stole £70 and left their victim with face and head injuries. And have you seen this man? Stuart Cummings, a convicted burglar, is on the run from Pontypool Young Offenders Institution. He may be living in Cardiff. If you have information about any crime, call Crimestoppers, free and anonymously. That means you won't be asked your name, ever, but we'll explain how you can still claim a Crimestoppers Wales cash reward.
Crimestoppers, sponsored by Sweb Electricity and Gas.
You know, I find it offensive being questioned about my whereabouts when one of my colleagues has been killed. But you're all right, though, aren't you? Because you were at that council meeting. Must be a dozen expert witnesses there.
They're all locked up for very good reason.
You say anything about that fight and there'll be another dead Purvis on this wing.
Friends or Traitors, The Bill and Bad Girls, Thursday from 8.
Coming next, today's latest national and worldwide news with Dermot Murnahan and Mary Nightingale.
For gardening, building or DIY, pop into Leekes and discover. Plain and simple, value for money.
Boots brings you a fantastic selection of top health and beauty products for only 99p. Only 99p. Now available at most Boots stores.
Thanks for missing the football for me.
It's a pleasure.
Now they're on their own.
Community has become vital.
4 survivors.
This is really silly, I can't do this.
£1 million. It's every survivor for themselves. Survivor, 9:50 tonight, ITV1.
The boy has exceptional skills.
I'm in charge of security here, milady.
You must join me, Obi-Wan, and together we will destroy the Sith.
The Star Wars interviews, GMTV tomorrow.
Good evening, you're watching HTV, ITV1 in Wales. It's 6:30.
Good evening, welcome to the ITV Evening News. Tonight's headlines. The Home Secretary makes surprise apology to police over reforms.
Leading loyalist paramilitary released in Northern Ireland.
Asylum seekers keep on coming in spite of tougher security.
And tennis star Kournikova sues for millions over mistaken identity.
The Home Secretary, David Blunkett, surprised police officers today when he admitted that he had made mistakes in his drive to reform the service. In a conciliatory speech to hundreds of officers at the Police Federation conference in Bournemouth, he said he'd been wrong to try to cut their overtime rates.
But Mr Blunkett insisted that he hadn't got it all wrong and said he would press ahead with reform, but that he wanted to work with the police and not against them. Many officers welcomed what he said, but earlier in the day, the head of the Police Federation made a fierce attack on the Home Secretary. Our Home Affairs editor, Shuli Ghosh, reports.
Arriving at the Police Federation's annual conference in Bournemouth today, the Home Secretary said he felt like he was walking the plank, and he wasn't far wrong. In a blistering attack on Mr Blunkett, the Federation chairman accused him of causing anger and resentment among the ranks by briefing against the police and portraying them as malingerers who abuse the overtime system.
You and your ministers have assured us several times, just yesterday, about these so-called briefings and leaks. And some may believe you when you insist, as you have done on several occasions, that you personally had nothing to do with these stories. Or some may believe you, but thousands don't.
But Mr Blunkett rose to the challenge, and he promptly did what few politicians ever do. He apologised.
To acknowledge that I've made mistakes, not in pressing forward with reform, with the legislation or with the negotiations for change, but yes, on the timescale and the understanding of what could be done from the PMB negotiations on the 27th of December, the need for better information, the importance of being able to do that together.
Officers here were astonished.
I think it was an unprecedented speech by a Home Secretary to a Federation conference. Unprecedented because he started with an apology. Never ever heard that before.
Though officers have now agreed a pay deal, they're still concerned over other changes. One promise Mr Blunkett has made is to cut the amount of red tape and bureaucracy that keeps officers off the beat. Claire Tudway is a PC in Oxford. She says even a simple arrest can generate hours of paperwork.
The paperwork starts as soon as you arrest someone, and the process simply to arrest that person and put them through a court case is phenomenal.
But officers remain sceptical of the government's plans for modernisation, and in particular proposals to give powers to civilian community support officers.
Mr Blunkett certainly had an easier ride than his predecessor. Last year, Jack Straw was comprehensively jeered by this audience. But though Mr Blunkett adopted a very conciliatory tone, it's clear that many rank-and-file officers remain to be convinced. Shuli Ghosh, ITV News, Bournemouth.
The problem for Mr Blunkett is that even though there are actually more police officers than ever before, people still say they don't see enough of them on the streets. With more on the challenge the Home Secretary is facing, here's Lauren Taylor in our computer graphics studio.
Labour have talked in the past about being tough on crime, but many people think there just aren't enough police officers to do the job. But is that true? In 1992, there were more than 127,000 police officers in England and Wales. By the year 2000, though, that number had dropped to just over 124,000. The Home Office then made a concerted effort to boost numbers, and by March this year, there were nearly 129,000 police officers, a record figure. So the government could argue that they're addressing the problem of police numbers, but almost as important is what the police do with their time. Research published by the Home Office has shown that they spend 23% of their time out in the community dealing with incidents and 17% of their time patrolling the streets. That's actually less than the time they have to spend on paperwork, 18%. And other duties in police stations also take up another 25% of their time. The Home Secretary admits that the police are burdened with too much bureaucracy and admin. So what are the possible solutions? Well, Mr Blunkett says he'll aim to reduce paperwork, particularly reviewing the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. A new police number, probably 333, could be set up for non-emergency calls, meaning genuine emergencies will be dealt with more quickly. And police officers could cut down their duties, fewer officers going to court, for instance, so that they can devote more of their time to patrolling the streets. Mr Blunkett isn't the first Home Secretary to talk about cutting crime and helping the police do their job more effectively. The police and the public will hope that this time it will work.
Lauren Taylor there. Now, supporters of the loyalist paramilitary leader Johnny Adair, who was released from prison today, claimed he'll be a force for good in Northern Ireland. Nationalist leaders, though, weren't so sure. Adair had originally been released 3 years ago under the Good Friday Agreement, but was sent back to prison for being involved in a loyalist feud. Here's Mark Webster.
Triumphant at being released a third of the way through his 16-year sentence, he shouted the loyalists' Latin slogan. Quis separabit, who will divide us? About 200 supporters celebrated the release of a man convicted of orchestrating sectarian violence and whose organisation has been linked to drug dealing and racketeering.
How do you feel to be out?
Great.
How do you feel? Brilliant. You shouldn't have been in there in the first place.
His release has caused alarm in Catholic areas, where they fear it's bound to lead to increased tension. Yet his spokesman insisted those fears were unjustified.
There's a great degree of fear within the nationalist community. The nationalist community have nothing to fear from Johnny Adair. Johnny Adair will be a force for good within this province. Thank you all.
Certainly the question is what this highly controversial figure will do next. Here at a prison riot, dressed in a red singlet, Adair revelled in his nickname Mad Dog. His mere presence at events like this so-called show of strength during the Drum Cree protest invariably whipped up Protestant anger.
No surrender!
And walking the streets in a bulletproof vest shortly before he was rearrested, he was accused of being behind a murderous loyalist feud. This evening, Johnny Adair was back home with his wife and 4 children. Safe in his heartland of the Lower Shankill, he was nonetheless served an early warning by the security forces. Despite the suggestion that Johnny Adair will now be a force for good in the community, the police say they'll be maintaining 24-hour surveillance on him here at his home and anywhere else he's travelled until they've decided what his real intentions in the near future are. At the same time, there are many in the nationalist community who are openly sceptical about the idea that he'll now be working for the peace process. Mark Webster, ITV News, Belfast.
11 illegal immigrants have been arrested after smuggling themselves through the Channel Tunnel, despite French claims that they would beef up security. Furious rail company bosses said just 4 trains out of a scheduled 11 ran last night because of continuing disruption in France caused by would-be asylum seekers. Our Europe correspondent Juliette Bremner is in Calais. Juliette.
Well, here at the Channel Freight Terminal at Fréthun near Calais, there does seem to be a new mood of determination amongst the security forces to show that they're now in control. They've clearly been stung by the criticism of recent days, and there seems to be a new drive, both to get rid of the refugees and the political problems that they bring with them.
The French police moved up a gear today, checking from the skies and patrolling on the ground, in no mood to be mocked by asylum seekers who've broken into the freight depot.
But last night, shielded by darkness, refugees from the Sangatte centre launched their latest assault on the terminal. They know security has been stepped up. Time is short. We watched as dozens scrambled into the containers they hope will be their illegal passport to Britain. But French policing is under scrutiny. The officers quickly find them and force them out. It's a game of cat and mouse, police flashlights hunting their prey from under the wheels of wagons. As the train pulls into Britain, it's stopped and searched again. French methods are not trusted.
Oh, come on, no problem.
As these pictures, captured by an ITV camera, show, there are reasons for doubt. A stowaway is extracted from behind the cargo and arrested. He must now convince the British authorities that he has good reason to stay. He was one of 4 illegal immigrants discovered, 3 from Afghanistan and 1 from Iraq. Although they've been caught, they're happy to have reached Britain, where they plan to claim asylum. Back on the French side, local police seem overwhelmed, explaining to me that they check only when a train's due to leave. Squads of special police drafted in make more impact, but few arrests. The refugees have few reasons to be afraid. The freight terminal is simply their best chance of freedom.
Now, Juliet, it seems pretty clear that despite increased police numbers, it is impossible, isn't it, to stop people getting through?
It's an exceedingly difficult job. Clearly things have improved today, but I think we must stress the today. And without sounding too cynical, there was a visit from the senior regional politician from this area, and I think that the police force were very keen to impress him. He clearly arrived with questions, wanting to know what had been going wrong. And every time that the asylum seekers were seen walking up and down here, quickly we saw men, security guards in yellow jackets, appearing to chase them off and to make sure that they didn't stay and didn't embarrass them in front of this politician. But I have to say that it doesn't look as if there's going to be an instant improvement. We've seen this pattern before, and for a few days perhaps the numbers dwindle, but then within a matter of weeks at the most we see this rush that we had over the weekend, and anything up to scores of refugees do make it successfully through the tunnel.
All right, Julia, in Calais, thank you.
Here, relatives of some of the victims of the Potters Bar train crash today went to see the track where the accident happened. Wearing protective hats, they walked onto the station platform to see for themselves where 7 people died and scores more were injured. This was the first time relatives had been allowed so close to the actual scene of the disaster.
Now, there was a sight in Dubai today to gladden the heart of every England football fan. David Beckham gently training for the first time since the injury that almost dashed his World Cup dreams.
The rest of the squad also had a workout after dismissing reports that some players had been in a nightclub until the early hours. From Dubai, here's Graham Miller.
10 o'clock this morning, and with the temperature already over 100 degrees in the sun, the coach took his squad to work. Once again, the authorities were determined we shouldn't film what happened next. But David Beckham was presented with some gifts on arrival before joining the rest of the squad on the police training ground. These are the pictures England didn't want us to see as they prepared out of the spotlight for the huge task ahead. It's the first time since breaking his foot that we've seen Beckham in England kit, but he received individual treatment rather than joining in with Sverigneron and the rest of the players, as they did a gentle jog to keep the limbs warm and run off any jet lag after their 7-hour flight out here to the Middle East. As they left the ground, the coach was informed that at least 6 of his squad had been seen in a local nightclub well into the early hours of the morning. It was here, Carter's Bar, a popular venue at the exclusive Pharaoh complex in Dubai, a 25-minute car ride from the squad's beachside hotel. They then joined in the nearby planetarium night spot's Boogie Nights evening before a fleet of Jaguars took the players home just hours before today's early training was due to start.
This is a holiday essentially for both the players and their families, and that's why they're here. It's not a training camp. That all begins next week. So if people are on holiday here or in the holiday in the UK, they're entitled to do as they please. These are professional footballers and they will act professionally, and Sven has no doubt about that. So the important thing is that they enjoy the chance to relax.
Well, there's no question that any of the group of players who left this bar and nightclub complex at around 3 o'clock this morning were in any way drunk or misbehaving. The question is being asked within football circles whether or not this was the wisest thing they could have done, so close to the World Cup finals. Graham Miller, ITV News, Dubai.
The latest from the England camp in Dubai.
There's more to come on tonight's ITV Evening News, including British troops in Afghanistan are struck down by a mystery bug.
Tennis star sues magazine over topless pictures.
And Glasgow prepares to play host to the Champions League final.
All that and more when we come back.
With 0% finance, 2 years servicing, 1 year's insurance, alloy wheels, CD tuner, air conditioning, remote central locking and electric front windows. The Rover 25 Impression S. Look good anywhere.
Well, I've called it Can. It's so cute. You can't hang your coat up there. Why not? That's for our best bananas. Bananas? Yeah. Why? Well, they're delicate things, bananas. You can't just pile them up on top of each other. We hang our bananas up to ensure they stay in the best possible condition. See? They're only bananas.
Excuse me, you can't hang your coat up there. It's for the bananas.
Market Street, for our freshest fruit and vegetables.
I'm trying to make a documentary.
Oh.
Welcome back to the ITV Evening News.
The main stories: the Home Secretary, David Blunkett, surprised police officers today when he admitted that he had made mistakes in his drive to reform the service.
And the loyalist paramilitary leader, Johnny Adair, has been released from prison in Northern Ireland.
Now, 18 members of the British medical team in Afghanistan have been struck down with a mystery illness, which is similar to meningitis. 2 are seriously ill and have been flown to Britain and Germany for treatment. All the medical staff have now been quarantined, but none of the combat troops are affected. From Afghanistan, here's James Mates.
So far in this campaign, there have been mercifully few casualties. This Marine the only one needing medical evacuation during the recent Operation Snipe. But now it is the medical staff themselves suddenly in need of treatment. 2 of the 350 who work at Bagram Air Base have already been rushed home to hospitals in Britain and Germany. 16 more are ill. All 350 have been quarantined. No diagnosis has been made yet. It appears to be some sort of enteric fever. They don't think it's meningitis, though the symptoms are said to be very similar. Whatever it is, it has spread fast.
The exact nature of this illness is not yet known. Our medical tests continue to isolate the cause. However, the illness appears to be contagious, and as a precaution, 34 Field Hospital has been closed to all but similar cases.
The Army Field Hospital at Bagram is in a secure part of the base that has never been filmed. The Americans and Germans have put their medical facilities at the disposal of the British. Obviously, the great fear here now is that this illness may spread into the main body of fighting troops. So far that hasn't happened, and planning for the next operation is still going ahead. But they do admit that a total loss of medical facilities like this could have a serious impact on the operational capabilities of the Marines here. James Mates, ITV News, Bagram Air Base.
Police have launched a double murder inquiry after 2 pensioners were found battered to death on a farm in Wales. Widow Elsie Davis and a male friend who's not been named were found at Tower Farm in Llangollen. Police, who described the murder as vicious, said they may have been killed during a botched burglary. Mrs Davis, who had lived at the farm for more than 60 years, was found in an outbuilding just after lunchtime.
The mother jailed for 60 days for allowing her children to play truant is still behind bars tonight after being refused bail. Patricia Amos will stay in prison until her appeal against the sentence is heard next week. Her lawyer says all she wants to do is to return to her children, who are now back at school. Here's Adrian Britton.
With her mother about to spend her 7th night in prison, 13-year-old Jackie Amos returned home from school today. She's been attending every lesson since Patricia Amos became Britain's first parent to be jailed for allowing her children to play truant. Today, her case went to Oxford Crown Court. Her lawyers asked for her to be released on bail, pending an appeal next week. The judge refused.
She was obviously very concerned about the whole situation, very anxious to get back to her family as quickly as possible. Obviously very very grateful for the interest that this case has generated, and just anxious to get out.
Mrs Amos's 15-year-old daughter Emma, here with a blonde ponytail, was off school this afternoon with the head teacher's permission. After persistently playing truant, she's being gradually reintroduced to full-time lessons. Yesterday, with relatives, the teenage girls visited Holloway Prison, where their mother is serving her 60-day sentence. While their mother remains behind bars, Jackie and Emma are having to stay here at their eldest sister's home. They must now wait 7 days for the appeal court hearing to find out if their mother has any chance of coming home early. Adrian Britton, ITV News, Banbury.
Two glamorous women have begun court actions against Penthouse magazine for what must be one of the biggest ever publishing errors.
Yes, the magazine printed topless photos of the tennis player Anna Kournikova, or so it thought. In fact, the pictures were of a member of the Benetton fashion family. Both women were furious. Katie Derham reports.
This could prove to be Penthouse magazine's most expensive issue ever. It boasted it had topless pictures of tennis star Anna Kournikova. But in what could be a record-breaking case of mistaken identity, the pictures were actually of this woman, Judith Soltesz Benetton, the daughter-in-law of Luciano Benetton, the fashion designer.
No comment right now.
In a court case which started yesterday in New York, she's suing the magazine for more than $10 million in damages. It was good. Meanwhile, Anna Kournikova, no stranger to glamour and publicity, has refused to accept the apologies of Penthouse and is also suing the magazine for damages, this time in a Californian court. Penthouse maintains it was an honest mistake, one they've never made before in the 30 years the magazine's been on the top shelves. The photographer who took the shots 7 years ago on a Miami beach claims to have spent hours studying photos of the tennis star and in court called himself an idiot.
We apologised.
Penthouse may have apologised, but British libel experts say that, particularly in Kournikova's case, the magazine could face a huge bill.
The real issue is going to be, were Penthouse simply careless? Did they just make a careless mistake? Or did they not care one way or the other? Were they reckless? If it's careless, she'll probably get about $100,000. If it's reckless, she'll, particularly bearing in mind that she's bringing a case in California, she'll probably get millions.
Lawyers for Penthouse's flamboyant publisher Bob Guccione have said that the magazine has never lost a case in 30 years. But Kournikova's court challenge could prove damaging and expensive to a porn empire in decline. Katie Derham, ITV News.
The Queen ended her Jubilee tour of Northern Ireland this afternoon after hosting a garden party for 3,000 people at Hillsborough Castle. Earlier, she and Prince Philip were greeted by cheering crowds as they arrived for a special all-faith church service in Belfast. Here's our royal correspondent, Tom Bradby.
Of all the trips she'll make this year, none is more potentially difficult for the Queen than this one to Northern Ireland. In a multi-faith service in Belfast, which reflected a wide cross-section of political views, they all stood to sing the national anthem.
We give thanks that Her Majesty has displayed an unwavering, consistent devotion to duty, unstinting service to the nation and the Commonwealth, and utter faithfulness to vows made at her coronation.
The Queen spent at least part of the afternoon with some of her favourite animals at an agricultural show, before going on to a garden party where she met, amongst many others, families of victims of the Troubles. This tour has been a reminder both of how much has changed and of how many there are who still live daily with their loss. Tom Bradby, ITV News.
A reminder now of tonight's main news. The Home Secretary David Blunkett surprised police officers today when he admitted making mistakes in his drive to reform the service. He told a Police Federation conference that it had been wrong to try to cut their overtime rates.
The loyalist paramilitary leader Johnny Adair has been freed from prison in Northern Ireland. Supporters said he would now be a force for good. Nationalists, though, aren't so sure.
And 11 illegal immigrants have been arrested after smuggling themselves through the Channel Tunnel, despite French claims that they would beef up security to keep out would-be asylum seekers.
Finally, the football-mad city of Glasgow has been giving a warm welcome to fans from Spain and Germany arriving for tonight's Champions League final at Hampden Park.
Real Madrid take on Bayer Leverkusen. Already the atmosphere is part fiesta, part beer festival, as Martin Geisler has been finding out.
If anyone in Glasgow had missed the fact that there's a game on here tonight, they know now. 70,000 visitors have descended on the city for the biggest club football match in the world. The lucky ones have tickets, but many seem happy to settle for a night in town.
It's very pub here.
And very nice
and
girl.
Pass for discotheque. Tonight is very good Glasgow, eh?
I need drink, beer, please.
Police, refreshingly, are not predicting trouble. Fans creating the party atmosphere everyone had hoped for. The City of Glasgow has put £400,000 into this carnival, but that's money well spent. It's estimated these supporters will bring £20 million worth of tourist revenue back into the city coffers. Real Madrid are tonight's favourites. Hampden holds special memories for them. In the European Cup final in 1960, they beat Eintracht Frankfurt 7-3 in what's widely considered to be the best club game ever played. Now they're back with the stars of today. Roberto Carlos, Raúl, Zinedine Zidane. Steve McManaman won't be going to the World Cup, but he's here, as is World Player of the Year, Luis Figo. He expects a tough game from a Leverkusen side who've already seen off Arsenal, Liverpool and Manchester United.
German teams normally they can play, they cannot play really well 80 minutes, but in 10 minutes they can score 2 or 3 goals.
The game is expected to serve up drama. Hampden certainly won't lack colour or atmosphere. Martin Geisler, ITV News, Glasgow.
And you can see the match live here on ITV1. Coverage starts at 7:30. That's it from us for now. I'll be back later with the ITV News at 11 o'clock.
And we're back tomorrow at 6:30 from all the ITV Evening News team. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
PowerGen, controlling energy for homes and business.
Good evening. It's a big night for football fans. The Champions League final coming from Hampden Park, live on ITV, of course. The weather for the game, well, some spots of rain are possible, but apart from that, it's not too bad at all. Temperatures around 12 degrees. And not a bad night for the rest of us. The patchy rain that's affecting Scotland will drift further north into the far north overnight. The rest of the night dry and mild, just a little bit misty in places. And then tomorrow, a fine day in store. Lots of sunshine for most of us. Any early mist will soon vanish. The far north will have some patchy rain to start with, then lots of sunshine tomorrow across most of Britain, and warm with it. 25 is possible in parts of the south. The high teens or low 20s for most of us. So a warm and sunny day for many tomorrow. Thundery showers on Friday and Saturday.
PowerGen, controlling energy for homes and business.
Paddy's really frustrated by Zoe in tonight's Emmerdale. That's coming up next.
Want great protection, but without any stickiness? Try Garnier Ambre Solaire's new high protection milk. The SPF 15 formula, now in a light non-sticky milk, quickly absorbs into the skin. It's water resistant, but it leaves no white marks. New Garnier Ambre Solaire. No stickiness, no greasiness, no sand. New generation Garnier Ambre Solaire. Relax, no one makes the sun safer.
Garnier.
At Leekes, we've made gardening and DIY easy. From mowers to barbecues to garden furniture, we'll help you make the most of the great outdoors. And for inside the home, we've got everything you'll need, including the right tools for the job, at the right price. So for gardening, building or DIY, pop into Leekes and discover. Plain and simple, value for money.
They knocked out Arsenal. They left Liverpool reeling. And Manchester United heartbroken. Now it's the real deal.
Luis Figo, Zidane, it's Raúl. It's brilliant!
The world's best players.
This is the trophy, this is the competition.
But is there a final twist in the tail? Bayer Leverkusen Real Madrid, the UEFA Champions League final. Live tonight, 7:30, ITV1.
The world's greatest tournaments, all on ITV1.
Warm welcome to Wednesday Night Entertainment with us here on HTV at 9:50. Following the big match live, it's Survivor. First though, Emmerdale.
I just said to say we're ill, that's all.
But my Uncle Zach is never ill. Apart from that time when he had cancer.
Charity.
Look, will you get that, please, Terry? Right, come on, Sam, no lying. Has he gone fishing?
Hello. Fishing? Why would he go fishing?
Ill?